Muted. Hello, everyone. It's Dan Symons here at C3 Metals. Thank you for joining us. We just have a couple other people that are entering, so we'll give them a moment here. Where this is our second virtual Q&A with the CEO here. My name's Dan Symons, President and CEO of C3 Metals. Happy to be here with you all today, and thanks for you taking your time to participate. This is an event that we plan to do quarterly and do consistently, and it relies on participation from your side, so to keep these going, so we appreciate it. We did have some questions come in because we have quite a significant, about 30 to 35% of our shareholder base is in Australia, with the time zones aren't great for these sorts of things. We did have some questions come in there as well, that and folks that have just indicated that they'll be listening to the replay, because this will be posted on our website following the event in the next couple of days. But with that, I'll get started. Maybe just first I'll introduce Karen Verret, if Karen could give a wave.
Hey everyone.
So we've got some good questions, and we prepared a few presentation materials to help us walk through those over the first part of this, and then if we have time, which I think we should, we will certainly open it up to any questions people have that are on this in this meeting. I encourage you to, if you have a question that pops into your head as we're talking here, please encourage you to use the chat function. You can direct the questions to everyone or to Karen, and Karen will read anything that comes in as we get through the presentation materials that we prepared. So without further ado, let's get going. First of all, I'll just share my screen here with what we've put together with all the great questions that have been asked. So first of all, I should just make sure I say, to keep our lawyers happy, we will be making forward-looking statements today, and it's based on the best information that we have available at the current time. Obviously, as we collect more data, information can change. So without further ado, we'll get started. The first question came from Paul in London. Thanks, Paul, for your question. Just asking, what size of budget do we have for each project for the next 12 months? Paul, being a little junior exploration company, we, in our budget process, how it works here at C3 Metals is we typically, management prepares a budget to our board of directors in December. And then that budget is approved for the following year. So for me to comment on the next 12 months is a little bit difficult, because I don't have an board approved budget for the next 12 months. But what we can comment on is, if we look from now through the end of the year, what we expect to be investing in both Peru and Jamaica. So from now to the end of the year, we expect, just use some round numbers here, we expect in Peru we'll be investing about 1 million Canadian. In Peru, the close to 30% of that is one of two remaining option payments that we have on some of the ground that we've picked up in Peru. There we had a work commitment, which we've fulfilled, and then we had some cash option payments on some of the concessions that we've picked up in Peru. So both this year and then next year we have the final one. So close to 30% of that $1 million is that option payment. And then the balance is really, we're focused primarily on community relations, as is very important, and also land access to that we need for drill permits, drill permitting, holding costs on the concessions, plus all the the people doing the community relations and government relations and permitting work for us, as well as a senior geologist. So that's really what's happening for Peru for about $1 million now to the end of the year. In Jamaica, it'll be about $2 million from now through the end of the year, Canadian dollars, and primarily that's drilling cost. And you may say, if you've been following the company, you'll know that on Tuesday this week we announced we've kicked off our next round of drilling. It's an 8,500 meter program with 2 drill rigs and we would expect that program to finish up late November, early December. And you may say, well, 2 million doesn't sound like a lot for that program, but some of that was upfront costs that we had in mobilizing everything and getting it down to Jamaica. So the way that we ended up structuring that contract, it was definitely front heavy. So we get a bit of a benefit on our meterage rate on the back end. So that's really the budget, about $1 million in Peru, about 2 million in Jamaica here through the balance of the year, which is about, approximately where our treasury balance sits today. So thank you, Paul, for your question. We'll move forward to the next couple questions are around Peru and what we're doing there. So we've lumped some of these together, but David from Glasgow, David, thanks for joining us, has asked for an update on the political situation in Peru, what the current timeline is for drill permits in Peru, and is this being affected by political instability, and what are local community relations like in Peru given past protests by communities nearby other copper producers, which there certainly have been, and we'll talk to that. And then Peter from Ottawa, Peter, thanks for joining us, has asked about drilling required in Peru to be able to enhance the maiden resource and the timeline. So first, I'll just touch on the political situation in Peru. It's actually business as usual. It's back to normal. Obviously, there was quite a bit of turmoil when President Castillo essentially attempted to skirt democracy and make himself a dictator, and that didn't go over too well, and he was arrested. So the vice president stepped up. There was some turmoil for a while in Peru. There is still some demonstrations from time to time, but where we're located, and as far as we're concerned, and other, you can speak to other operating companies, we really are back to business as usual in Peru. In terms of timeline for drill permits, I won't say that they're necessarily being affected by political instability. I will say that they're just being affected by the process that exists in Peru. Whether you're a junior company, a senior company, a foreign company, a Peruvian national company, a Peruvian company, it doesn't seem to matter. I think that there's the last time I talked to our general manager in Peru, there's only been 3 drill permits issued since the beginning of 2020, and its companies are averaging about 2 years from start to finish on obtaining drill permits on newly acquired concessions. So it's really more the process and the length of time that it takes to work through the system, both through the ministry, but also through the local communities. And this really touches to your point on the next question. One of the things that we need to do, like most countries, not all, but most, certainly where I sit in Canada, it's this way, is typically the company, like the exploration company like C3 Metals, has the mineral rights, but does not own the surface rights. So what the government in Peru, and part of the reason that it's slow for permits, it really puts the onus on the companies to negotiate the surface access agreements or land access agreements with local communities. And until you have those in place, you can't collect the baseline data, which takes about 3 months, and water sampling and those sorts of things to finalize your permit applications to get processed. So it is one of the key critical path items. And when we think about some of the local communities where we have an agreement in place with the Haka community for around our Montana de Cobre deposit, which we've just announced a maiden resource on, which we'll touch on in a moment. But we also, and that also covers a couple of the other targets in Peru. But for instance, on the western side of the belt, where our Khaleesi project is, which we'll talk to here in a moment as well, it's a completely different community. And when you talk about some of the other producers nearby, it's been very public in the media about the issues that the Labambas mine has had. When the Labambas mine was set up, they were originally talking about doing a slurry pipeline for transporting their concentrate, and it was actually there was some pushback in the community for wanting jobs of driving trucks. So they went to trucking everything, and now they're actually going back, and they've made an announcement they're going to make the capital investment in the pipeline, because unbeknownst to the community, while the additional jobs for truck drivers were great, it's just there's just a tremendous amount of traffic in that area, and it's an area that's very, very rural and not used to a lot of traffic. So, and it creates a lot of dust, and it's just created a lot of problems. So that's being moved. One of the challenges that we had initially that we're through now with this particular community was just differentiating ourselves and explaining that, you know, we're not this producing company, we're not this junior exploration company that used to be in this area. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. And one of the other things that can make some of these local people nervous is certain members of these communities are making a living by through mining, through informal mining. And there's concern always that companies are going to come in and it's going to take their livelihood away. So we actually recently held a site visit with members of the community who are active informal miners, and showed them exactly where we want to do work, what we want to do. And it's a ways away from where they are, because they're mining these epithermal veins, and we're focused on the adjacent porphyry. So now that it takes time to build that trust. We've been doing an excellent job. Our team on the ground's been doing an excellent job with it, and we think we're making progress. So I'll cover where we are on permitting as we get into Peru, and where we think we're going to be next, because this kind of pairs off onto Peter's question of how much more drilling is required to enhance the maiden resource, and what is the timeline. So we'll just give a bit of an update here on where we sit in Peru and what the plan is here for the next little while. You'll remember what you see in the tan here. This is C3 metals ground. We've actually picked up more ground recently. We're around 30,000 hectares now. So we've continued to pick up ground. We really believe in what we have here. It's going to be a longer term project, but we think the wait is going to be worth it with the ground that we've picked up. Just north of Hudbay's Constancia and Pampacancha's mines, just to the east of Labambas, M&G's Labambas mine, which we talked about. First Quantum's Haracara project is here as well. That as you look at the tons and grade, that'll be a mine at some point. And then you have BHP and Rio Tinto in the last 18 months or so have really come in aggressively and picked up as much ground as they can. So it's, we often see this in times where there's where it is a bit difficult to operate and the timelines are longer, where the larger companies will come in because they have the bandwidth to wait, and they look over prospectivity over speed. And we certainly are in a highly prospective area here. Just a bit of the history, we started with a 5,700 hectare package, and in two short years, we've grown that package by 426% to just over 30,000 hectares now. So, and the reason that we've done that is we identified two parallel belts that are running through the property, 28 kilometers in length. On the eastern side, we have the Jasperorty belt. It's 28 kilometers of magnetite with 13 near surface or outcropping skarn targets. We believe that this is porphyry related, and I'll speak to that in a moment. But then on the western side, on the Khaleesi belt, as we call the Khaleesi belt, you have outcropping both epithermal veins, which are being mined by certain members of the local community. We have outcropping skarn mineralization, and then what looks like a very, very sizable outcropping porphyry target, which is arguably the #1 target within the C3 metals portfolio. It's going to take a bit of time there for that one. I would say that we're probably a year or so still away from being able to get in there and drill over at Khaleesi. But when we think about what we've done so far and expanding the existing resource, since we've picked up this ground, we've really just systematically drill tested just one of these targets, and that's the Montana de Cobre skarn, identified with this yellow star here. Since speaking to you all at the last event, we made an announcement that we've released a maiden resource, which is a major milestone for the company. You can see the bulk of this, the vast majority went straight to measured and indicated with the tight drill spacing we had on it. So we achieved 52 million tons of 0.5% copper and 0.2 gram per ton gold, which leads to about 570 million pounds of copper and 325,000 ounces of gold contained in this ore body. It's really important to know, this isn't just where you have it anywhere. This is what sits within an economic pit shell. So, we look at the mining cost of others in the area. We look at what we assume recoveries will be, looking at other projects. We're running our own metallurgical work right now to confirm. We assume 75%, which is probably on the conservative side. And then you assume a copper price. We use $3.75 a pound, and you create, okay, what would be economically extracted within a pit? And when we look at what would come out here, it looks like it's less than a 1-to-1 strip ratio, and it's right at surface. And then if you were to raise the cutoff grade all the way up to 0.45% copper, within that conceptual pit shell, you're still going to get 16 million tons of 1.1%. So that tells you there's a high-grade core to this deposit. And anytime you have a low strip ratio with a high-grade core that you can get to quickly and in the mine life, it really increases the economics. But what we're focused on is we do think that there's a little bit more here. I will say we probably have this drilled out about 90%, because we believe it used to be attached to this star just to the northwest of Montana de Cobre, where this is we call it Cresta Verde. And it looks like from the geology, there was a skarn bridge that came across that's been eroded with a glacier in the middle. So Montana de Cobre itself probably doesn't have a lot. It has a little bit. It's still open in 3 directions, but we don't think we'll be adding significant tonnage there. What we do see is an opportunity along these belts to define multiple deposits for a central processing facility. So that's really the game plan here. When we think about the next targets and when we think we'll be able to get to drill, we are focused on modifying this existing drill permit around Montana de Cobre, which just touched the edge of Cresta Verde and then to the south, Colón de Oro, these targets. So when we move to the next slide, you can see what I'm talking about here. The existing drill permit was good for anything within this black hashed line. And then we're extending it increasing the ground by 74% to extend within this gray line. So once we have this, it's permitting. So I'm always cautious with timelines because it is a bit beyond our control. We try and do everything we can to, anytime we get a question asked, we turn it back and kick the ball back to the ministry. We try and be the squeaky wheel to get the grease. And we've been one of the few companies that have been successful moving things. I know it feels like a long time to all of us, but we have had success moving faster than some of the other companies in the area. We're really, really big on this Cresta Verde area up to the northwest. The reason being is, and we think again, the caveat, this is based on the best information we have today. We think that we're going to have this drill permit before the end of the year on this expansion, this modification, which would allow us to get back in and do some work here that we want to do. The reason that we're big on this is if you look at the northern side of this magnetite belt, the Jasperoti belt, where you have, this was previously drilled for iron. So we already know that there's 632 million tons on the northern side. So our best estimate then, if we look at the entire belt, is probably somewhere around 1 billion tons of magnetite. And when we think about why is that significant? Well, just to take a parallel to Grasberg, which is the largest copper gold mine in the world. But it's one that our VP exploration, Steve Hughes, has worked at for 12 years of his career. So he knows it extremely well. there was estimated 2 billion tons of hydrothermal magnetite in and around this area over a 10-kilometer trend, and we estimate about 1 billion tons over a 28-kilometer trend of hydrothermal magnetite, which tells us that we believe this is these skarns were formed and they're porphyry related, and we think that there's likely a blind porphyry target that's sitting just underneath the northwest side of the Cresta Verde deposit, which would fall within this next permit application, what we could drill test. So that's one of the reasons that we're focused on getting this modification done as soon as possible. When you look at the southern side of the Jasperody belt, we know that there's got to be something pretty juicy down here, because the informal mining activity has picked up significantly. There's multiple stretches. There's a 1.5 kilometer stretch being mined up here. There's another 3-kilometer stretch being mined here, and there's another little area here. So the grade profile for this to be economic, it has to be high grade for it to be economic for the folks in the area doing this artisanal type mining. And we're really anxious to get in here in the future as well. Typically informal miners will take less than 1% of an overall deposit, and they do a really good job showing you where it is. So it's just about creating the right relationships so we can all work together. But then on the western side, as I mentioned, Khaleesi is arguably the best target in the portfolio. You can see the epithermal veins that are being mined. You may be able to see the little, it looks like a little village, but that's actually the informal miners on these epithermal veins. We do have some samples off of them, very high grade copper and gold. There's outcropping skarn mineralization, very high grade copper. The gold drops low, but then there's a massive footprint for an outcropping porphyry where we've sampled over 1% copper, close to 1 gram per ton gold at surface. So it's we do have some geophysics here. It looks like it could be, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, because it's very early stage. It has never been drill tested, but the footprint and the signature certainly looks like it has potential to be another La Bombas style deposit. So we think it's worth the wait here with the strategic ground that we've picked up to go through the process to get these permitted and get them moving through exploration. So just in summary then, in Peru, I mean, we've secured over 30,000 hectares in a very short period of time. We've put out the first maiden resource on our first skarn target of 13 on the eastern side of that belt. We have outcropping porphyry and skarn mineralization on the western side. And I think it's really important that everyone understands we've only systematically drill tested just one target along both belts. So there's a lot of runway here. We're right now doing some of the preliminary metallurgy work on that first resource on Montana de Cobre, and to make sure to see where the recoveries come back on a leach scenario. And then the key focus for us is community relations and expanding the existing drill permits and getting other drill permits in the area. So we're doing everything we can to reasonably move that as quickly as we can. So thanks very much for those questions. Alar from Thornberry has asked about how would we compare the ease of doing exploration in Jamaica with that of doing work in Canada? And what is the cost of exploration in Jamaica to that in Canada? So I'll start with your first question, Alar. In Canada, it's ease of doing exploration. Depending where you are, infrastructure can be a problem. So, and that relates to the cost side of your question too. It really depends. If you're in the Timmins camp, or if you're in a known you're in the Abitibi Greenstone Belt in Quebec, Val-d'Or area, you're going to have lower costs because there's a lot of service providers set up there, and it's really easy to quickly mobilize a drill rig over to where you are. If you're somewhere a little bit more remote that doesn't have the infrastructure quite in place, then your costs are going to be much higher. So it really comes down to infrastructure. It's hard to create an apples to apples comparison, but knowing what it costs from my previous company in an active camp where there was ourselves, Alamos Gold, and Wesdome, where three companies had fairly aggressive exploration programs going around two producing mines and a mine that actually just poured gold here recently. So three mines now that are producing. Our exploration costs there were about $300 a meter all in. So in Jamaica right now, because of the mobilization costs, our cost on a contract rig are about $400 a meter all in. So it's about mobile. Now, once you have that rig there, your cost lower the longer you keep it there. So it's really important for us is now that we've got this large rig that we've mobilized to Jamaica to do everything we can to keep it and keep it active, because your cost profile per meter drops the longer you have it there, because those mobilization costs shrink down over the course of a large program. In terms of ease of doing exploration, Jamaica has been just a tremendous place for us. I've been so, I did a lot of diligence before joining the company 11 months ago, but even with that diligence, it's really exceeded my expectations. The country is, the government's regulatory environment's been very, very efficient. We've received drill permits on all three of our main blocks within 2 months of application, and those permits are good for 5 years. Unlimited drill pads, unlimited holes. So it's a opportunity, I think, for an extremely underexplored area where the government has certainly signaled that they want to attract foreign investment. They want to see mineral exploration. Mining's the #2 industry in the country. So while it costs a little bit more because of mobilizing equipment and people in up front, once we're there, and now that we're getting ourselves established, we think that we certainly have a advantage. The one thing that Canada also does have, though, is the flow-through market. So we don't have that in Jamaica, which is the tax advantage where you can raise capital typically at a premium to your share price for a tax advantage to the underlying subscriber of that flow-through share. So there's different pros and cons of each area, but we're really happy to be doing what we're doing in Jamaica. I think the prospectivity is extremely high because it's so underexplored. Moving on to Leon, asking about where can we get the next update on drilling from Jamaica, and then and Rolf, all the way from Germany, had asked about some color about the drilling program and cost in Jamaica. So I think we've just covered some of the costs. Rolf's also asking about burn rate and what that looks like. So, we're burning about close to 700,000 Canadian a month, and that's supporting obviously 2 different jurisdictions, and the bulk of that spend is 1 on the option agreement in Peru, and then 2 on drilling. So actually, I should flip that order. #1 on drilling, 2 on the option agreement. So it's all things that are value add. We we think that the Treasury should last us till close to the end of this year, and that was as we set it up when we did the last round of financing. That's what we expected. That gets us through this drill program, and that'll give us an opportunity to really flood the market with assay results, which we expect would start in September and roll steadily through the end of the year. So we think that with having 2 rigs running for this program, we'll be able to have a steady stream once we get started here with assays coming in September through the end of the year, which really should help us drive some momentum in the marketplace. Joe has joined us from Kelowna, looking for an update on all projects. Joe, thanks for joining us, and we've just gone through an update on Peru, so maybe I'll just go through Jamaica. We did announce that we've just started drilling on Tuesday morning, so happy to say that we've mobilized 2 drill rigs. One is a larger contract rig that has the depth capacity to drill much farther than 1,000 meters. We don't plan to drill too many 1,000-meter holes, but we do have target depth on some targets at 700 meters, and if we can visually see we're in the mineralization, we'll certainly let the rig keep going, and it's definitely capable of doing so. We also purchased a manned portable rig for ourselves, and essentially this was a $200,000 investment. So it's some upfront capital, but then our cost profile, we can drill for very inexpensively with this rig ourselves. And what it allows us to do is, because we have so many targets in front of us, one, it allows us to test the strike extent of the existing known targets where there is some existing drilling, and we can do it very cost effectively before bringing a contract rig to test to depth extent on those areas. And then two, we can scout test some new areas with it extremely cost effectively, and it's really easy to move around for us. But when we think about what we're sitting on in Jamaica, we have 16 porphyry and 40 epithermal targets identified over a 30-kilometer strike extent. We have drill permits on all of them through at least mid-2027, and then they can be renewed. So we have lots of runway ahead of ourselves. The difference between the porphyry targets, they're all these stars that you see here. The difference between the red and the green is the red have some limited drilling where we've confirmed porphyry mineralization, where the green are prospects where we can see it at surface, but we suspect, but they have not yet been drill tested. And all the green dots are the epithermal targets all over the place. So we really do feel we're on a district here. When we zoom in on this Bella's Gate area where this next drill program is going to be, that we've just kicked off, we've spent a lot of time over the last 6 months really just getting into the field, boots on the ground, and remapping this whole area. So we brought over 4 of our Peruvian geologists to Jamaica, as well as a couple of Jamaican geologists, and we have one American consulting geo that's leading for us, someone that actually has worked with our VP exploration at Grasberg and in Indonesia in the past. And what we've done here, you can see we've remapped this whole area, but what you're looking at here, this is all the copper and soils. So anywhere you see that magenta color, that's over 300 ppm in the soil. It's extremely high. You're looking at 2 parallel belts that we've identified that are running where you have all these high level porphyry clusters coming through. It's quite similar to Cadia Ridgeway, we think, that's in New South Wales, which is one of the bigger discoveries for Newcrest in the early 90s, where what we've seen so far to date, when you look at the geochem and soil, and then we look at some of the sampling we've done, all these magenta triangles you see here are samples we've taken from surface over 1% copper. So there's definitely, when you see this sort of footprint over, multiple kilometers, really from end to end, about 10 kilometers stretch, there has to be a driver or multiple drivers of systems this large. So what we think we're looking at is the tops of all these high level porphyries, where there's a massive intrusive down underneath somewhere, and that's what we want to find as the driver. From the limited drilling that's been done here, you can see there's been some pretty good success near surface. Things like we drilled a hole last year, 309 meters, 0.44 copper, 0.33 gold, only 15 meters below surface at this Connors target. Previously at Camel, we also drilled 179 meters, 0.37 copper, 0.16 gold from 10 meters below surface. There's up at Provost, 292 meters, 0.3 copper, 1.4 gold, 29 meters from surface. And then down at Geo Hill here, 158 meters, 0.32 copper, 1.5 gold, only 3 meters from surface. What's really important to understand here is almost all our results are in the volcanic wall rock. You're not even in the intrusive yet. You haven't seen any bornite, which is the key, the high temperature copper sulfide mineral. And porphyries, typical porphyries, when you get into the guts of the system, you're going to get a lot of bornite, and the grade will really pop. And if we're getting 0.3 to 0.% copper in the volcanic wall rock, we think that we should see at least double, if not, and sometimes there's instances where it's up to 5 times the grade. So that's really the prize that we're looking for here with this next program. And just to give you a bit of history, if we zoom in on this area between Geo Hill, Epitote Ridge, and Connors, if we take a line and a section across these 2 belts across here, Geo Hill's had just a couple holes drilled into it. Connors had a few more, and Epitote Ridge has had nothing. And we look at this, this is back in the early 90s. BHP drilled a few scout holes, and they hit at Geo Hill, they hit about 100 meters, 0.38% copper, 29 meters from surface, hit some more copper further down the hole. They didn't assay for gold at the time. The hole actually ended in 0.38% copper because it was just a scout hole with a small rig. And then over at Connors, prime exploration at 150 meters, 0.5% copper, quarter gram per ton gold, 12 meters from surface. You fast forward to 2014 at Connors, Oz Minerals hit 116 meters, 0.6 copper, 0.5 gram per ton gold, only 28 meters from surface. And you have to ask yourself, like I always ask myself these questions, okay, well, if it's so good, why are people not here? And the answer really comes to, this is prior to any geophysics being run on the property. You see these drill holes coming down, and you can see anywhere that what we're looking at now is magnetic mag on top and IP chargeability on the bottom. And anytime you have that coincident mag and IP chargeability, you're in mineralization. So then you look underneath Epidote Ridge and you say, okay, this looks very, very big. Like you start counting these blocks here. If this was all mineralized, you're looking at something that could be a 1 billion ton type target. So the prize is definitely high here. If we're right about this. So we went last fall, and we knew we didn't have a drill rig that was going to be able to get all the way into this, but we wanted to test, is the geophysics showing us, is this a fluid channel where this is the guts of the system, where then the fluid came up and really created these fingers or these hypotheses off the main intrusive. And what we think we're seeing at surface is the tops of all these fingers, and there's a big beast of a system somewhere down underneath. That's why we brought in this drill rig that's capable of drilling at depth. And when we drilled that hole to test that, that's where we hit the 309 meters of 0.44 copper and 0.33 gold. And why that is so important for us is, one, it showed that yes, that fluid did come up from somewhere at depth. And again, this is mostly in wall rock. So I think the significance of this is when we announced this hole, we were up, the stock was up over 30% and traded over 8.5 million shares that day. And anyone on this call knows that as a little junior company, we do, like other peers, struggle with liquidity at times. And so it's just, we've never been able to follow up on it because we weren't going to spend a lot of money with a rig that wasn't capable of hitting the actual target. What we've done with this last financing now, we've brought in the drill rig capable of doing it. And this is what we're going to be doing in this next round. We have a drill pad already ready up there, and we're going to be coming down and trying to get into what we think geophysics are showing us could be the guts of this entire system. So that's what we're doing. And again, just looking at it from a bird's eye view to show what this looks like, you can see Geo Hill here with just a few drill holes, Camel just to the south, Connors up here. Epidote Ridge sits underneath here. And you can look whether it's what we're looking at now is a bird's eye view where we've scraped the first 100 meters off the surface. So we're already down 100 meters. And you look at the mag, you look at the IP, you can see there's these coincident anomalies, but it looks like, they're definitely separate targets. But if we take this down to 400 meters, which the IP would be reliable to, you can see it looks like it's all converging at depth. Everything's moving down towards this area to the north side of Camel and underneath Epidote Ridge. So we're very keen on this target, and it's going to be part of this next program. Just not to belabor the point, but if we take a long section now from Provost down to Camel, along what we call the Camel Belt, this is over 4 kilometers. And when we look at the mag features here, you can see anywhere you see the red and orange here in these drill holes that have previously been drilled, you're into that 0.3, 0.4, 0.5% copper near surface. So this is what you want to see. And again, you're in the wall rock of this, and you're not even in the bloody intrusive yet. When you get into the intrusive, that's when the grade should pop. And now we have the ability, you can see these black lines here. These are holes that are planned for this next part of this program where we're really going to get into it. I think it's really important to understand, at Camel, like 75% of the holes at Camel have terminated in mineralization. When we look Bella's Gate wide, property wide, the average drill depth is less than 225 meters, and 40% of the holes have ended in mineralization, strong copper gold mineralization. So that just tells us, one, we need to step out along strike, and we can do that with our small rig and test the strike extent. And then we needed to get a bigger rig in here to test the depth extent. You had only 5 holes drilled here at Geo Hill ever, and 2 of them have ended in mineralization. They've never been followed up on. So these are the types of things that we're really excited to get into. And now, there's a lot of positive morale with the team right now as we're getting back and drilling's fired up again. And then we think bigger picture. If we look at Bella's Gate, and you can see again, all these magenta triangles are a surface sample above 1% copper. You move up to the northwest as you cross the Crawl River Fault that comes in between these two, and you move up to this Arthur's Seat discovery we made last summer. I mean, this whole area is loaded with copper too, and we think there's multiple porphyry targets up here as well that are blind underneath the surface. So we've done extensive remapping here. We're just going to, now that we've finished off these blocks, we're going to be shifting over to Main Ridge here soon. But when we zoom in on Arthur's Seat, again, it's an 8-kilometer by 4.5-kilometer area with just copper all over the place. On the southeast side, we have this vein swarm, which was more gold rich. It looked like at surface, where we had all these magenta triangles switching from copper to gold. These were all over 2 grams from surface. We did drill a few holes into this. We got about 8 scout holes into it. We did not hit a high grade shoot out of the gate, but you saw everything you wanted to see to show, okay, these veins were active. We actually saw bornite mineral in some of these veins as we drilled into them, which means that there's a porphyry down below. When you see a low sulfidation vein that's been overprinted or telescoped by a high temperature mineral like bornite, that means that there's got to be something down below that was active after the fact. So we're really keen to get in here. Then moving around to Main Ridge, we've done less work on this because we've just received the drill permit in April, but we're going to, and we've been doing a lot of work at Bella's Gate preparing for this drill program, but now we're sending the team over there. You may remember the past producing Pennant's gold mine sits right in this niche. We don't own it, but we surround it on 3 sides. And that was a small resource, 73 million tons, but 1 epithermal vein running 21 grams per ton gold. And when you look, there's one lone drill hole drilled right on the edge of our property back in the past, hit 3 meters of 17 grams per ton, never followed up on. Over 4 kilometers, we've sampled anywhere from 1 gram to 35 grams at surface along this splay fault called the Bennett Fault. And then to the north of that, there's another splay fault called the Rio Minnow Fault. And we've got rock chip assays of copper up to close to 3%. We've done channel sampling, 16 meters, 1.22%. So you put the whole 30-kilometer package together, and we really think we're onto something here on a district scale. But we're starting at Bella's Gate. That's where we have the most data, where we combine our field geology work, our copper and soil, our geochem work for what minerals are in soil, and looking at that, because selenium is actually a very key mineral for us for porphyries and moly as well, and we have that in soils with copper, and then focused on the geophysics and looking at all the historical drilling to really shape this program. So I think we're in really good shape kicking this off now. So that's what we're doing in Jamaica, and hopefully that gives you a bit of an update. And then I think the last question that we had come through this registration as we were putting the materials together was, will we be updating the market throughout the campaign, including pictures of core intervals to give an indication of mineralization? I think we definitely will include pictures of cores in our press releases with assay results when we have assay results. There's always that debate: do you release pictures of drill core absent of your assays? Because sometimes in this industry there are companies that do that, and they get a nice run up, and then the assay results come out and they can be underwhelming, and then things just fall back down. So I think if we get into where we may not do that for the first few holes, we may want to see the assays just to be sure. But you can certainly see when in copper it's easier than gold, for instance. So But if we get into it where we've put out some assays and now we have continuous results, where we have a better idea of exactly visually how things we think they're going to grade, and we think it's material to the company, we can certainly consider that going forward. I think there was one other late question that came in from my friend Tom. Tom, thanks for joining us today, talking about do we see value in potentially separating at some point? Thanks, Tom. Separating Peru and Jamaica. I think one of the challenges and also benefits to C3 is, thinking of the challenges is it makes it a more complicated story for investors, especially at this early stage, having two separate jurisdictions. We end up with shareholders that some shareholders are more focused and keen on what we're doing in Peru. Other shareholders are more focused and keen on what we're doing in Jamaica. And it does complicate it a little bit. The other thing it does for us, it gives us quite frankly, an elevated burn rate compared to some of our peers that are focused on one project, because your carrying costs are for two distinct assets. Now, the flip side to that is if you separate these, you're going to have two public company costs, two corporate costs to carry, and then two other things two jurisdictions to fund separately. So there is that. I do believe I can see this both ways, and I just think we need more information. If we were in a right market and we were in a hot market for exploration, I think it makes perfect sense to separate these and give our shareholders the benefit to play both vehicles separately. I don't think we're in that market today. So that's one thing. And then I can also see the benefit if we get on to the discovery phase, which we think and hope we're going to, and we really start that 2-3 year run where you're up 10 to 20 times. At that point, it won't matter, and people will start looking at it like a pipeline. But you have to get there first, and we're not quite there yet. So I think time's going to tell us what's the right strategic move for this. I can see it working both ways, and we'll just have to gauge one, market, and then two, success that we're having. And with that, I think we've covered everything that was that we were going to cover through the questions that came in through registration. I can see that there have been some things that have come in through the chat function. So maybe Karen can start reading some of those out and we'll go through them.
Yeah, there's actually a question that was late in the registration as well. Mm-hmm. It's Janine. I see you're on the call as well. Janine's joining us from Kingston, Jamaica. And her question is, great. How can I be a part of the C3 Metals team in Jamaica?
Oh, thanks for joining us, Janine. We really appreciate it. I would say that what I would do is, Karen, maybe if you can type your email into the chat to Janine. Janine, if you can share your email Karen separately after this event's done, we'll make sure to connect you to the appropriate people from our team in Jamaica. And that's one of the things we try and do to the best we can with the obviously need the right skill sets, but we try and hire as many people locally as we can when we can fill positions locally. And we do have quite a good Jamaican contingent to our team, from geologists to drillers to helpers. One of the things we're doing actually with our small drill rig that we purchased right now, we've brought over, as part of this, we brought over some people from Indonesia, where the rig came from, who know this rig and know how to run it. And we have them for about 10 weeks, and we're training Jamaican crew that will end up be the crew running this rig. So we believe in education, training programs where people can see the right career trajectory within the organization and do as much as we can to hire locally. So Janine, please, Karen's going to send you her email. Please email Karen directly, and we'll get you in touch with the right people in Jamaica. Was there any other questions here, Karen, that have come in?
Yeah, there are a few from Tom as well.
Yeah. Okay.
First question. Are you seeing them? The first question is on Jamaica. Is 8,500 meters of drilling enough to get attention from investors?
Tom, I think with the targets that we have and what we're going for, I think we can get intentions for investors with one hole if we hit one deep one. because when you get into these are big systems if we're fortunate enough to get into it. So the short answer is yes, is it could be, but it depends on what the results are. I will also say this, with the targets we have in front of us after this mapping program, just in Bellas Gate, we've already designed a program for 21,000 meters. We have drill ready targets, and it's more being capital constrained at this point. So if we can have the success that we think and hope we're going to get with this program, the idea is always get your valuation higher before your next capital raise, so it's less dilutive. And then what we want to get to, it has to be results dependent, but what I'd really like to get to is have 4 rigs running, because we certainly have the amount of targets we have, where then you get to these situations, and I've been fortunate enough in my career to be part of them, where you can really outperform the market because every 2 weeks you have assay results coming, but you have to make sure you have the targets to support that. And I think we're going to be able to answer that with this smaller program to say, okay, does it justify the investment to really ramp up? And what we want to do, if we have the success that we think and hope we're going to have in 2024, then we would want to ramp up. We'd want to ramp up, double what we're doing, and be in a position then for the next 2-3 years to every couple of weeks be flooding the market with news. And those are the companies that outperform for those 2 to 3 years through the discovery phase. I'm fortunate in my career to be part of them, and that's where we want to get to with C3 Metals. What other questions?
The other questions he had was, can you confirm that it was $700,000 a month?
Yes, yeah, I can confirm that. Now it's a bit lumpy. The month when you make a option payment that's close to 300,000 is going to be over 700,000, and there's other months that are closer to 5. But on average, if you look at it, it's 700 a month.
And the last question is, can you give a little color on the low volume trading as of late?
Yeah, I just think we're in a vacuum where we haven't had much news. We've 2 things happen. One, anytime that you go out and raise money, which we did at the beginning of May, you suck capacity out of the market of potential buyers. And we raised $5 million, primarily from institutional investors, secondary from insiders, and then some high net worth retail shareholders who wanted to follow on with their positions. So, you took $5 million of demand out of the market. Now, every investor that came in on that financing understands the timeline for when we expected to get news flow. We told everyone we expect the news flow to really start in September and then ramp, just continue very steadily through the end of the year. So that's what we're focused on. And also, I can get the sense from speaking to investors right now, just it's been an abysmal market, and there's not a lot of additional liquidity out there. And when you think about the percentage of a portfolio that goes into risk capital of early stage exploration companies, it's over an overall investment portfolio. It's typically small, and when all these companies, you have so many of them near their 52-week lows, investors are really, and without new liquidity coming in, it's really tough to sell something at a loss, to buy something without being really, really sure on it. And I just firmly believe we need to get drill results out in the market, and I think we've done a good job getting enough eyeballs watching. So when we get the drill results that we should get out of this program, that we can hopefully quickly see some momentum build back and liquidity build back.
That's all I have for the chat.
Okay, well, look, thanks for everyone for joining today. I really appreciate it. I would like to thank you all for taking your time. We're committed to continuing to do this once a quarter for you, and it really helps us when you can submit questions in advance so we can prepare some materials around to help us answer with some visuals. But you're obviously welcome to ask questions live during the event also. So we're happy that you took the time to join. There will be a replay available in the next couple of days. It'll get posted on our website and through social media. It will be announced. So if you have any friends out there that you want to say, hey, come take a look at this, we'd be more than happy to have you do that for us. It's all about getting eyeballs on what we're doing, because we expect the drill results to start coming out next month and continue through the rest of the year. So please keep your eyes open for them. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.